it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the first card in my 2016 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using this adorable MFT set called Beast Friends and also this Holly Jolly 6x6 pad by Pebbles, and there's a quick look at those patterns. I'm going to zoom in so that we can begin with our coloring. And I'm just putting a piece of post-it paper down to protect my work surface so that I can lay out my Copic caps for you to see. Sometimes a little bit of the residue inside those caps just leaks out onto my craft mat and I just want to keep it clean. So I'm using a series of BGs to color in the face and the ears of my Yeti, and I'm starting with BG 11 as my lightest color and then building up around the shaded areas of his face with the BG 13, the BG 15, and then just a little bit of that BG 18 in the darkest areas. And that's going to give him a lot of depth and dimension and really make the hair on his forehead pull forward so that it looks like it's really hanging over his face. Once I have all the shadows laid in, I'm going to go ahead and work back down in the reverse order. So just blending out everything and then leaving a lot of wide open space in the center for that lightest color just to keep his face nice and bright in the middle. So now I'm going to move on to the fur on his body, and I'm using W00, W1, and W3 for that. I just wanted him to really look white, but kind of have a little bit of shading to him and look a little bit, not dingy per se, but just as a creature out in the wild would look. Definitely not a pristine white. The good thing about doing the shading right now as opposed to, say, after the lights are colored is that I can color right over top of those strings and I don't have to worry about getting color where the lights are going to go. Because the colors are so pale, it's not going to show very much, and anything that does show is going to look like it's in shadow anyway because it's where the shadows are colored on his body as well. So I was super excited to see this set when it came out because Rudolph is my #1 favorite Christmas movie, as I'm sure it is for a lot of us. But I can distinctly remember being a small child, and anytime the scenes where the abominable snowman was on came on the screen, I would always, hide my face under a blanket or peek through my fingers, and it was so scary to me back then. It's kind of laughable now as an adult to look back and think about that, but he was scary in kind of a delightful way. I really looked forward to those scenes and I thought they were a lot of fun. So this set just brings back a lot of nostalgia for me. As you saw, I grabbed my colorless blender and just blended out the center of his body to keep it nice and bright, just in case the W's got a little bit too close to the center of his body. And now I'm moving on to my trees. And I'm coloring those in with G21, G24, and G28. And I'm keeping the lightest portions of the tree at the top of each section and then shading in at the bottom of each section so it looks like that part is in shadows. Certainly you could just color these trees a solid color, but creating these rows there just adds a lot of dimension and depth, which you guys know is what I really love in my coloring. And these trees remind me of the Christmas tree forest from Rudolph when Sam the snowman, who is Burl Ives, is singing Silver and Gold, and all the little critters are coming out and decorating the trees, and there's a couple of little squirrels and some little bunnies in that scene, and that was another part of the movie that I always really loved. So these will really help me create a little scene for our Yeti to live in. For my tree stumps, I'm going to use E25. It's such a small, thin area that really only one color fits. So then I'm going to move on to my lights. And I wanted a different color combination than you would typically find. At first I was just going to do a solid string of red lights, and then I decided to add in some pink. I thought that might look fun. So I'm just dotting in a little bit of R39 for some shading at the base of the bulbs, and then I'm using the R29 to just fill in the remainder of those. And then I'm going to grab my R85 and I'm going to do the exact same thing, and then I'll just fill that back in with the R81 to finish up the lights. And this is definitely one area where you could skip the shading. Probably no one but me will even notice, but it's just something that I like to do. I decided to make the present pink, so I used the R89 at the bottom and then blended it out with the R81. And I used the R29 for the bow. And then I decided to give him some pink cheeks so that they look nice and rosy since he's out in the cold. So I used the R81 for that. And then I took my lightest blue, the BG11, and just colored over the edges of that so that it would blend a little bit better into his face. I die cut our focal panel out with the MFT stitched wonky circle frames, and the snow piece I also used the Lawn Fawn Hillside Borders dies, and then I'm also using that stitch wonky frame die to line up my sentiment, which says, "Are you Yeti for Christmas?" I'm inking that up with some Lawn Fawn chili pepper ink, and then I'll just line that up in the center and stamp that down. And the white cardstock is the Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth. That's my go-to white cardstock for coloring or stamping or anything like that. So because our focal panel is cut out of pattern paper and it's not super thick, I also cut out a piece out of some cheap Georgia Pacific white cardstock so that I could just back it with that and help the focal panel to have a little more stability. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue my snowbank down over top, just making sure to line up those stitching lines. My card base is W+9's Lake House Blue cardstock, just cut and folded to a standard 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card in the portrait orientation. And then I've also trimmed down my pattern paper to fit the whole front of the card base. And I just glued that down with some Tombow Mono Multi-Glue. I've got an additional piece of pattern paper that has some festive text on it, and I die cut that with the Lawn Fawn Stitch Scallop Border die. This is the largest in the set of 3. I absolutely love that die and I can't seem to stop using it. I'm going to try not to use it on too many cards for this series, but I love that die. And now I've got a 3" by 4 1/4 piece with some candy canes on there that's going to go in the center. And then I'm going to put a bead of glue right at the top and put another little tiny strip of that text piece at the top so that it just ties that back in. And now we're ready to create our little scene on our focal panel. So I'm putting some glue down on some trees. I got a little bit too much. This is a brand new bottle of Tombow Mono. I ran out of my last one, so it comes out a little bit fast. So I just used some of that excess glue to glue a second tree as well. So I'm putting the large tree on the left and then the middle and the smallest size tree on the right. And then I've got this little present that I'm also going to add to the scene here, and that's going to balance out the left side. And then I toyed with the idea of putting some foam tape on the Yeti, but in the end I decided to just go ahead and glue him down with some more Tombow Mono because it's going to make him a little bit easier to mail. When you're going to be sending out a lot of cards at once, it's a good idea to make it a little bit easier on yourself and not have to pay too much extra postage. But I can't make a card without any dimensions, so I did put some foam tape on the back of the focal panel, and I never pay extra postage for that. I just take an extra piece of cheap cardstock, cut it down to the same size of the card, and I tuck it in front of the card in the envelope, and that kind of flattens it out, any bumps, if it's not too much dimension, and goes through the sorter just fine. I've never had any problems. So now I grabbed some black enamel accents and squirted some out onto an acrylic block, and I'm using the sharp end of my pick-me-up tool to just dot that over his eyes to make them nice and bright. And then I wanted to add some glitter, so I grabbed the patina stickles And I'm going to dot a little bit of that at the base of each of the Christmas trees. I'm just using really light pressure and then using the tip of the nozzle to kind of swirl that around so it's not real thick. It doesn't take too long to dry, but it just adds that nice sparkle. And then I'm going to take some crystal stickles and I'm going to use that to just dot a little bit over each of the Christmas lights, and I'll also add some to the presents. You could also use glossy accents for these as well. In fact, I made a few more cards using this set after I made this one, and I did use some glossy accents on some of the bulbs, and those turned out really nice too. So it just depends the look that you're going for. Also, if you get a little bit of stickles out of place, you can always use your pick-me-up tool or any kind of fine-tipped tool like that and just remove any excess of the glitter. And that's going to complete card number 1 in my 2016 holiday card series. I hope you guys really enjoyed. Unfortunately, this summer, as I was trying to make space on my computer, I accidentally deleted the footage for card number 1 from last year's series, so I'll link to that below the video instead. But for now, I'm going to leave you with my 2016 craft room tour. You can check that out if you haven't already by clicking on the video clip. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and all your likes and subscribes, and have a great day. Bye-bye.